in terms of ownership, people, I think the big question around here is how much are they bought in? Are they too focused on the Penguins or the NASCAR team or Liverpool, whatever it is? And it's tough for us to tell because John Henry has not been available to us in the media since they made the Mookie Betts trade. That was the last time he spoke about the Red Sox publicly in a traditional press conference format. So, when he's in hiding, it's kind of tough to see or tough to tell how invested he is. This is a team that, always spends money. I don't think they're at the very top this year in terms of payroll, but, if they're in it at the deadline, I think they'll be willing to go over the CBT. They were last year, which ended up being a mistake. They have obviously Rafael Devers, who, despite having a down year, he got a $330 million contract. So I think they're lacking a little bit of star power that falls on ownership in terms of, are they boring? I think, in that sense, yes, a little bit. Devers is the only star, really. Chris Sale, we saw flashes. He's hurt again. Trevor Story, could he be a star? Sure, but he's been hurt. So in terms of boring, I think that might be why I would lean yes a little bit. I think anything's interesting when you come to the trade deadline. You have to pick your identity. They had to do that last year. They straddled the fence. I think they have to pick one direction or the other this year. And Heimblum might be in job-saving mode. Alex Cora might find himself in a place where he, either doesn't want to keep doing this because, he's not been handed a roster that he likes over the last few years, or he finds himself in hot water maybe because of the sloppy play on the field. So I think in Boston, there's always interesting storylines from my perspective, but, mediocre 30-30 is probably, less exciting or less interesting than a historically good team or a historically bad one.
You hit on the ownership a little bit. The ownership's not going to do anything at the trade deadline. They didn't do anything in the offseason. What all of a sudden is going to be, oh, here we go. Like, look for you. And you said stars. They had Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts. Stars that came up through the organization. Where are the Red Sox going in the next 5 years? And don't give me the whole they had this bad year. And then they won a World Series. Yippity-yay. We know how hard it is to win a World Series. Where are they going? What do you see? Do you see 500 ball for next 5 years?
It's always an overcorrection. That's the thing. They'll do something where they go and have, a championship GM who is a guy that's willing to spend and willing to go get, division titles and buy championships in Dombrowski. And then they think, oh, wow, we're over the CBT. We got to rebuild the farm system. Go get Chaim Bloom, who does not have that aggressive DNA. He's built the Rays and helped them for 15 years. And we've seen that be kind of a slow process. I think that there's probably, if Chaim is to get fired or if they're to move on from him, probably an overcorrection in the other direction where they go out and get some GM who is willing to spend, willing to make aggressive trades, willing to overpay. I think the really interesting thing is, I've been covering the team for 5 years now, and most of that's been under Chaim Bloom. They've made 2 trades as a buyer, Kyle Schwarber, which was a rental, and Adam Ottavino, where it was cash for Ottavino and a prospect and a salary dump. They have not made any trades to buy in Chaim Bloom's entire tenure, which is crazy if you think about the trades that came before him. Kimbrel, Sale, looking back at trade deadlines before or even offseason, Adrian Gonzalez, Victor Martinez, you add stars or you add really good players to this mix, and they haven't really done that. So I think in terms of Chaim Bloom, if they struggle, I do think that he probably is on the hot seat down the stretch. And then there's going to be that overcorrection where they go out and get probably some veteran seasoned GM who just wants to win and does the Dombrowski thing and tries to build an instant contender with some of the pieces they have. But the lack of star power in Boston, I think, is the most striking thing. That was apparent from the first day of spring training. Like, there's big names, and the guys who have good career sense, right? Kluber, Turner, Jansen, Story, Sale. But in terms of like MLB top 100 guys right now, it's Devers and nobody else. I think Yoshida, obviously playing himself into that mix, he's been helpful and a very good player. But it's a team that lacks kind of that. Think back, not just Mookie and Xander, like you mentioned, but Ortiz and Pedroia and Manny and Schilling and Beckett, these guys that they had in the past. They just don't have those guys anymore, and it's a tough way to build a roster, and an even tougher way, I think, to build fan interest around here.
I worked for the Red Sox in player development for like 6 seconds. Tell everybody why I'm so smart and I love Marcela Meyer.
I think he's the complete package, and he's a guy that, he was obviously your blue chip prospect coming out of high school. They were, I think, thrilled that he fell to them. People thought he was going to be the number 1 pick, but just a natural athlete, a guy that they feel like can do it all, and he's a guy that has really checked every box. Right, he's in Double-A at 20, so I think fans are really excited about him. And Scott Boras said this, and I think it's true. A big piece of not wanting to sign Bogaerts for so long was that they kind of saw this kid coming and wanted to, kind of keep the path open for him. So how that works out with Trevor Story the next few years is interesting, but they clearly have him earmarked as the heir to Xander, who, if you look at it, no offense to my favorite player growing up, Nomar Garciaparra, Xander is probably the best shortstop in franchise history, the one with the best track record, and I think they think Meyer can really, kind of unseat him on that throne.
No offense, but did you watch the Doug Mientkiewicz Legends territory where he said they had to get rid of Nomar in order to win? So
yeah, well, if you told 7-8-year-old Chris Cotillo that, it would be a very sad day.
So you're a fan?
I was back then, yeah. It was, but I was 7, so it was acceptable.
Okay. Would you take, as a Red Sox fan, because you just admitted you're a fan, and don't say you're not, because you are. That's
not.
a lie. That's a lie.
I root for quick games and good stories, AJ. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Yep.
No, it's not.
You just admitted he was a Red Sox. It's fine.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie.
It's okay. Deep down, when he is no longer working for the beat, he's still going to root for the Red Sox.
Nope.
Nope.
Not at all.
Fake news.
Okay.
Don't worry about it, Chris.
Now that
We're
Scott's
on your
lying
side.
some more. Chris, would you take Dave Dombrowski coming in like he did, wins a World Series, does it all? Now they're kind of back to, we got to rebuild this thing again. Or are you in it for the long haul with Chaim Bloom and saying like little pieces, Marcela Meyer, or whoever they have coming up, and then mix and match with a free agent here and there? Which one, as a fan, not saying you're a fan, the fans of Fenway, the fans in Boston, which one would they rather have? The quick fix, let's win a World Series, or the long haul?
I think it's the quick fix and win a World Series. And Dave Dombrowski had a really interesting quote, I think, right before he got fired here. Remember, he got fired less than a year after winning a World Series. That was September of 2019, and he had won the World Series in October 2018. He had a quote to Bob Nightingale that said, I don't understand why I'm on the hot seat. I thought it was about winning. Like, I've delivered 3 division titles in a row and a World Series. Like, I don't understand, Like, I thought this game was about winning, which is probably the mentality you should have. Obviously, there's trade-offs, and I think the Red Sox probably, as I said, the overcorrection leaning in either direction. When Dave Dombrowski comes in and does that, to an extent, guts the farm system, though, a lot of good players, whether that Devers or, some of these other younger guys that have come up were under his purview. When you do that, you go over the CBT, there's costs, and that's what, baseball has those rules in place for. When you do that and you win, you spend a lot of money, you're going to get penalized so that, you can't do it every year. Somehow, obviously the Dodgers find a way, and even with no payroll, the Rays find a way, it seems. But I think Red Sox fans would rather have, the winner instead of this long haul. That being said, there are some guys under Chaim Bloom that are starting to show like they can play. Duran is one. I know he struggled in the last couple of weeks, but he's been pretty good so far this year. Conor Wong is, ended up looking like one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. And so, those guys and some of the, between the margins guys, Garrett Whitlock and, Christian Arroyo to an extent, and, some of these other guys they brought in, Duvall for a week at the beginning of the year, look good. There's just not that central cast of, superstars and homegrown superstars that they used to have that they have now. So, you can only do so much on the margins. To answer the question, they want a winning team, but at the same time, organizational sustainability, these guys in the front office, they're focused on, let's try to build a contender every year. Would you rather have the Rays model where they make the playoffs every year and haven't won one, or, the Red Sox first place, world champions, last place thing? It's a tough question because, racking up regular season wins at the end of the day, you guys know better than me, doesn't mean as much as winning that trophy at the end. So as a Red Sox fan, you've won 4 World Series in the last, 25 years or 20 years. They, I think, would trade the last place finishes for that. But all of a sudden it's, 5 years since the last one and people are getting antsy.
Antsy. That's that's unfair. People in New England are spoiled, including one of our producers. But he's not on here right now, so that's part of it. You mentioned Conor Wong. Is the trade of Mookie Betts just an absolute flop?
I mean, Jeter Downs being the centerpiece of that deal, I think that they looked at him as the most talented piece, the piece they were most excited about. He played like 10 major league games for the Red Sox and struck out in 21 of 41 plate appearances, and now can't make the majors with Washington. So when you miss that badly in a Dodger system where, look, there's so many talented guys and that's the guy you got, I think it's tough to not look at that as a flop in hindsight. Verdugo is a guy who, has really produced this year. Everybody around him says he's matured a lot. I think he's been probably an above average player, an above average starter for now 4 seasons. He's had his ups and downs, sure. He's more of a supporting cast guy in the past. Now he's kind of one of the featured players. And I think people in Boston like him. Conor Wong was kind of the throw-in piece when they redid the deal. I think he's probably, maybe exceeded expectations a little bit, just especially defensively with his frame, the power he can show. If that guy turns into, and this is a big ask, you're starting catcher for 5-6 years, and you have what Verdugo's given you. It's not a complete flop, but they were counting on down so much, and that was such a disaster. I think you're looking back, no matter what they got in the return, it was never going to be good enough. I think the best comp is the Lindor trade, what Cleveland was able to get. Obviously, a couple guys up the middle that, have really, and I know you had one of them on today, guys that, have really, solidified, Cleveland's lineup and been kind of, bona fide players. Verdugo and obviously Wong have not been that, and Downs was not. So that I think is always going to be one of those where, it's tough to get enough. I do think that looking back, they decided, there's not much, it's not going to be a crazy package for 1 year of this guy. And we're going to lessen the value by attaching David Price in his contract. That was a valuable piece of it too, for better or for worse. I know it's not sexy for fans to look at, we got $16 million of payroll relief to get under the CBT, but I think that was a mandate from ownership, which is a whole other problem in and of itself. And that makes the return look a little underwhelming, 3-4 years later.